get to Tim Walz, who, just when you think no one's sitting at this table, neither she nor the big white blanket, can embarrass themselves any further, he does. She asks him, to her credit, about the carrying the weapons in war, which we know is a lie. He never served in war. He's been stealing valor for quite some time.
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on DEI, and we let them define what woke is. We got ourselves in this mess because we weren't bold enough to stand up and say, "You damn right we're proud of these policies. We're going to put them in, and we're going to execute them."
So, wait, you lost because you weren't woke enough?
Greg Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly unleashed a no-holds-barred roast of Tim Walz so sharp it left the Minnesota governor politically disoriented. With Greg's signature sarcasm and Megyn's pinpoint precision, they exposed the chaos, confusion, and cringe behind Walz's leadership. From failed policies to empty press conferences, nothing escaped their brutal analysis. This was not just critique. It was a full demolition of incompetence wrapped in biting wit. If Walz had a plan to recover this takedown, just cancelled it.
You said you carried weapons in war, but you've never deployed in a war zone. A campaign official of yours said you misspoke, did you? Well, I'm proud, incredibly proud of my record. He keeps doing this. Equally proud of my service in the classroom. Did I mention I was a teacher and a coach, an assistant coach? Okay, whatever. But he's more stolen valor. In the classroom, I'm in the classroom. My record speaks for itself. It doesn't, actually. You've put a lot of lies into that record that you've been called out on by service personnel. You must clarify, as your campaign had tried to do, and now you appear to be distancing yourself from that.
Greg Gutfeld was already grinning before he said a word. That usually meant someone was about to get flattened. This time, the lucky contestant on Greg's game show of mockery and destruction was none other than Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz. A man so committed to mediocrity, he could make beige wallpaper look provocative.
Here's, two pieces of this that are really... I speak like they do. People are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about, and then he goes on to blame it on the school shootings. I guess he was upset about school shootings, so he lied. But stop saying you speak like we do. I speak like regular people. What kind of bullshit is that?
Greg leaned back like a man ready to feast on political absurdity and reached for his favorite weapon. Sarcasm. Walz was not just a leader, Greg mused. He was a full-time bureaucrat, part-time logic dodger, and aspiring master of public confusion. A man whose idea of leadership was to issue a press release, cancel it, and then blame the press for reading it.
Walz also seemed to doubt the validity of the last election and future ones.
They've released analyses of election data out of Clark County, Nevada, that show some pretty convincing evidence of election tampering. So what can we do to make sure, A, that the midterms actually happen, and B, that they're free of fraud?
Yeah, this one's occurred. We saw just recently down in Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to...
Greg did not need a crystal ball to predict Tim's next move. All he needed was a basic understanding of how to run from responsibility while smiling like he was solving world hunger. If political cowardice had a mascot, Walz would be front and center holding a gift bag and asking for a raise.
Pouring of love for his son and the relationship between a father and son in that moment was overwhelming too. Yes, even among Republicans. But he wants to dodge the responsibility for his lies, and he brings up his son to do it. He tried.
Greg's mind replayed the greatest hits. The time Tim tried to explain his economic plan and somehow ended up describing a low-budget disaster film. Inflation not his fault. Job loss a cosmic mystery. Small businesses closing faster than pop-up Halloween stores in November just a coincidence.
I love this. The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramp.
And Tim Walz really did indeed look like the bumbling knucklehead he said he was.
Greg laughed. Watching Walz handle crises was like watching someone juggle chainsaws blindfolded in a wind tunnel, except the chainsaws were on fire and the wind tunnel was his own administration. The man made chaos look like performance art. If Dysfunction had a playlist, Walz's speeches would be the top tracks. And then there were the lockdown flip-flops. One week it was science, the next it was feelings. Then another surge and Walz was back on camera with that same look. The one you see on someone who walked into the wrong wedding reception but decided to give a speech anyway. Greg marveled at Tim's dedication to saying things without meaning anything. Every press conference was a dance around real answers. He did not pivot, he pirouetted like a moose on roller skates. And the slogans. Greg swore his campaign speeches were written by a motivational cat calendar. All fluff, no substance, just feel-good gibberish. He blamed potholes on climate change and grocery prices on vibes.
You're exactly right in the dynamic. You could tell Walz was unsteady on his feet. Here is part of his very first answer. They kicked off the debate by going to him, and the question was basically as follows: Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, blah, blah, blah. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? And here's Tim Walz.
Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is...
Greg figured if Walz ever wrote a memoir, it would be called Leadership in Reverse. How to walk back every decision without looking like you are running. Each chapter would be a masterclass in public evasion, ending with an apology to nobody. The real joke, Greg said, was how Tim kept getting re-elected. He chalked it up to Minnesotans being either too forgiving or too polite to admit they voted for a substitute teacher who forgot the lesson plan. Then came Megyn Kelly stepping into the roast with precision like a surgeon wielding a verbal scalpel. Where Greg brought jokes, Megyn brought the indictment. She did not just critique Walz, she dissected him. Politically, of course. She started with education. Walz, once a teacher, presided over one of the most chaotic school systems in the country. Schools open then closed, curriculums confused, parents furious. It was as if his education policy came from a dartboard filled with bad ideas.
I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed correctly. Because Walz saying old white men suck isn't a political stance, it's his confession. Walz calling people old and white is like Maxine Waters making fun of someone for shopping at Wigs R Us. He wants to execute more DEI policies, and Trump wants to execute murderous gang members. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen.
When parents asked for answers, they got lectures instead. Walz treated concerned parents like a viral threat. Contain it, downplay it, blame misinformation. Megyn raised an eyebrow and said if bedtime stories count as rebellion, then Tim must think parenthood is dangerous. Then came the riots. When leadership was needed most, Walz auditioned for the role of Invisible Man. Megyn recalled how he mumbled at a podium and then vanished like a magician who skipped rehearsal. The National Guard showed up late not because they were slow but because Walz was checking political wind speed on social media. In that moment, Megyn said it was not just buildings burning. It was trust. Walz had a gift for standing calmly in the storm while being the one who forgot to board the windows. His passive leadership belonged in a museum with a sign that read warning may cause confusion and economic decay. Then she attacked his COVID record. The restrictions, the inconsistencies, the exemptions. She joked that in Walz's world a barbershop was a hazard but a rally was democracy in action. If logic were money, his administration was bankrupt.
You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm
incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about.
She laid it out cleanly. Tim Walz did not lead, he performed. He spun mandates like a game show host spinning a prize wheel. But leadership is not trend chasing. It is decision making. And Walz treated decisions like hot potatoes. Toss them, spin them, and hope someone else catches the blame. She turned to the economy. Small businesses got crushed while big chains thrived. It was a rigged game. And Walz was the dealer pretending he did not shuffle the deck. Greg returned to tag in. He targeted Walz's obsession with optics. The governor believed a big smile could erase all damage behind him. Greg joked that Walz's social media team worked harder than his policy team. Each tweet polished, every photo edited, as if hashtags could fix housing, crime, and education.
With Walz, it's hard to even bring him up. He has a resting snitch face. You know? I mean, he forfeited his man card during COVID and the riots. And you're right. And also, at that diner, of course, he left early. So don't you find it weird that for a terrified Politico lingers on candidates' fingers and defend Walz's wide eyes as they claim beards are for bad guys?
Greg imagined a war room where staff spent hours finding the right angle for Walz's next announcement, only to forget what it was about. Performance over policy, theater over truth. It was leadership by illusion. If Walz captained the Titanic, Greg said he would hold a press conference about the iceberg's attitude while tweeting about hope, unity, and ice diversity. Megyn moved in for the final blow. Walz had mastered accountability without consequences. Trust vanished, but he kept spinning. He kept talking. Because in the end, Megyn said Tim Walz is not a leader. He is a placeholder. A man who fills space, makes noise, and prays the applause covers the mess. A governor who governs with mirrors, smoke, and enough charm to confuse the room. Greg added that as long as Walz kept pretending, they would keep the spotlight on him. Because comedy writes itself. And with Tim Walz, it writes a whole season.
But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter.
4 fundamentals and 2 confusing, saying Israel when you meant Iran. Not ideal. May I remind you of Donald Trump's first tweet when she chose him? Thank you. That was just... I mean, he did seem unsteady. And that's the thing, because one of the goals when you get out there, Camille, is to try to project, don't worry, if anything happens at the top, I can do this job. And at no point last night did Tim Walz.
And the roast kept sizzling. Greg leaned forward like a cat spotting a slow-moving laser and went after Walz's climate agenda. Environmental care is noble, Greg admitted, but in Walz's hands it looked like a Pinterest fail. Solar panels slapped on crumbling school roofs, electric buses that broke down more than his speeches, and bike lanes in neighborhoods where no one rides bikes. Greg joked Walz wanted Minnesota to be a Scandinavian utopia without the working government or reliable transit. And then came the best part. The grand plan to cut emissions by mowing less. Yes, the lawn revolution. Greg laughed so hard he nearly tipped his chair. Somewhere in a government office someone thought skipping yard work would save the planet. Meanwhile, Minnesotans looked at their weed-filled yards wondering if they could get tax breaks for doing nothing.
And the idea that you said that you were in war. Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog.
This took chutzpah.
Megyn picked it up without missing a beat. She zoomed in on Walz's addiction to surveys and task forces. Every problem spawned another group, another commission, another panel of suits delivering no answers. It was leadership by committee. Megyn said Walz loved consensus because it let him avoid decisions. Why lead when you can delegate the blame? Crime kept rising and Walz kept brainstorming slogans. Instead of addressing the problem or backing law enforcement, he bent over backwards to avoid controversy. Megyn called it spineless ambition. Greg nodded. Walz built a career sounding sensible while doing the opposite. His legacy would not be change or growth. It would be prolonged confusion wrapped in a feel-good press release.